So, good day everyone. Last meeting, we explored how the brain and the nervous system communicate through neurons and neurotransmitters. Today, we're moving into another equally important communication systems in the body, the endocrine system. So, our topic is hormones, sex, and gender. So, at first glance, some people think this lesson is simply about reproduction. Pero as a future psychologist, you will soon realize na mas malawak pa rito ang saklaw ng hormones. Kasi ang hormones influence how we think, we feel, we react to stress, how we build relationships, how we become parents, and even how our brain develops before we are born. So today's lesson is one of the most fascinating chapters because it connects biology with psychology. So it explains how our body and brain work together to shape human behavior. But, and this is very important, biology is never the whole story. So throughout today's discussion, you will notice a recurring theme. Human behavior results from interaction among biology, psychology, and environment. So, hindi sapat na sabihin natin ganito siya dahil mataas ang kanyang testosterone or ganito siya dahil babae siya. So, behavior is much more complex than that. As psychologists, we must avoid simplistic explanation. So instead, we appreciate the interaction of genetics, hormones, brain functions, experiences, culture, family, and the society. So that perspective is exactly what biological psychology teaches us. I'd like everyone to think about these questions. So raise your hand if you ever heard someone say, boys naturally become aggressive because of testosterone. Have you ever heard someone say, girls are naturally more emotional because of hormones? So again, how many have heard statements like this? So do you think these statements are always true? Let's find out throughout today's discussion. Let's begin with a quick activity. So this activity is called the myth or fact. So I will show you several statements. Hormones only affect teenagers. So that's correct. Hormones influence us throughout life, from prenatal development until old age. So they regulate growth, stress, metabolism, reproduction, mood, and many aspects of behavior. Stress can change hormones levels. So stress activates hormonal responses, including the release of the cortisol. So these hormonal changes can affect emotions, cognitions, and behavior. Testosterone automatically causes aggression. So many people believe this, but scientific evidence shows that testosterone does not directly cause aggression. So instead, it interacts with the brain, environment, and social experiences, and personality. We'll discuss this later. Biological sex and gender mean exactly the same thing. So these are different concepts. So we will learn why later today. So notice something? So many misconceptions about hormones come from social media, television, or casual conversations. Our goal today is to replace myth with scientific evidence. So now that our minds are warmed up, so let's understand the body's second communication system. Most of you are already familiar with the nervous system. So remember neurons? So neurons communicate rapidly using electrical impulses and neurotransmitters. The endocrine system works differently. So instead of electricity, it communicates using chemical messengers called hormones. So these hormones are released into the bloodstream and travel throughout the body, influencing target organs kasama yung ating brain. So imagine this. Suppose your professor wants to announce an emergency class suspension. So there are two ways. The first is by calling you immediately. So that is similar to the nervous system. Fast, direct, instant. So the second way is posting the announcement in your class group chat or in Google Classroom. So eventually, everyone receives the information, but it takes more time. That's similar to hormonal communication, slower, but the effects often last much longer. So that is the major difference between the nervous system and the endocrine system. Major endocrine glands. The endocrine system is made up of several glands that release hormones into the bloodstream. So according to our module, so this includes the hypothalamus, pituitary gland, the thyroid gland, adrenal glands, pancreas, ovaries, and testes. So each gland has a specialized function, but they work together to regulate many physiological and behavioral processes, such as growth, metabolism, reproduction, stress responses, emotional regulation, and social behavior. So, can anyone give me an example of a situation where hormones might be influenced by behavior? Okay, so possible answers: stress before examination, falling in love, puberty, pregnancy, or fatigue due to lack of sleep. So those are all examples where hormones interact with the brain and behavior. Hypothalamus and pituitary gland. Among all endocrine structures, two deserve special attention. So these are the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. So think of the hypothalamus as the body's internal monitor. It constantly checks what is happening inside the body, such as your temperature, hydration, energy balance, and many other internal conditions. Once it detects that something needs to change, it sends signals to the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is often called the master gland because it helps regulate the activity of many other endocrine glands. So this relationship demonstrates how closely the nervous system and endocrine system are integrated. So in other words, the brain can influence hormonal activity throughout the body. So why do you think psychologists need to understand the hormones? Okay, so now that we understand how hormones communicate, let's examine how they influence human development even before birth. One of the most remarkable findings in biological psychology is that sexual differentiation begins long before a baby is born. So, sexual differentiation refers to the biological processes through which individuals develop male, female, or intersex physical characteristics. So, these processes begin during prenatal development and involve interaction among genetic, hormonal, and environmental factors. At conception, the embryo typically receives either XX chromosomes or XY chromosomes. If the embryo has a Y chromosome, a gene called the sex-determining region Y can trigger the development of the testes. The developing testes then produce testosterone and other androgens, which influence the formation of male reproductive organs and contribute to the masculinization of certain neural structures. So, in the absence of significant androgen exposure, female reproductive structures generally develop. Thus, sexual differentiation depends on both genetic and hormonal influences during critical periods of the development. As a future psychologist, remember that biological development is complex. So while there are general development patterns, not every individual's biological characteristics fit neatly into a binary classification. So some people are born with intersex variations, so meaning that their chromosomal, hormonal, or anatomical characteristics do not fit in the typical definition of male and female. So these variations are naturally examples of human biological diversity and remind us to approach this topic with scientific accuracy and respect. So now that we've discussed how sexual differentiation begins during prenatal development, let us continue by examining primary and secondary sexual characteristics. So these two terms are commonly confused. So let's clearly distinguish them. First, primary sexual characteristics. So these are the reproductive organs directly involved in the reproduction. So examples, testes, ovaries, uterus, external genitalia. So these structures are already established during prenatal development and continue to mature as the individual grows. Second is the secondary sexual characteristics. So these are physical changes that usually become noticeable during puberty. So example, for males, facial hair, deeper voice, increased muscle mass. For females, breast development, wider hips, changes in body fat distribution. So these changes are not directly involved in reproduction, but they signal sexual maturation. So can you identify another secondary sexual characteristic that develops during adolescence? All right. So growth spurt, underarm hair, pubic hair, and skin changes, including acne. So notice that these changes occur because hormone production increases significantly during puberty. So what does exactly happens during puberty? So a hormonal milestone. So puberty is one of the most dramatic biological transitions in human development. So according to our module, puberty begins when the hypothalamus activates the reproductive endocrine system, leading to increased secretion of sex hormones. So these hormonal changes contribute to physical maturation, reproductive capability, emotional development, and changes in social behavior. So think back to your own high school years. So many of you remember classmates suddenly becoming much taller, experiencing voice changes, or becoming more conscious about their appearance. So those visible changes were only part of the story. So inside the body, hormones were also influencing emotional development, motivation, social interaction, and reproduction capability. So these explain why adolescence can be an emotionally intense stages of life. However, remember that each person's development timeline is unique. Some individuals mature earlier, while others mature later, and both patterns can fall within typical development. Why do you think adolescence is often associated with emotional changes? As psychologists, we recognize that these emotional experiences emerge through the interaction of biological, psychological, and environmental factors, not hormones alone. So now let's move from physical development to one of the most important concepts in biological psychology. This distinction is one of the foundational concepts in biological psychology. Researchers classify hormonal effects into organizational effects and activational effects. Although both involve hormones, they differ in timing and duration. So let's discuss each one. Organizational effects occur during critical periods of development, especially before birth and during early life. So these effects produce relatively permanent changes in the anatomy, physiology, and neural organizations. So para mas maintindihan, so imagine constructing a house. So the foundation is poured only once. After the concrete hardens, changing the foundation becomes extremely difficult. Organizational effects are similar. They establish the biological foundation upon which later hormonal influences operate. So halimbawa, according to module natin, exposure to testosterone during prenatal development influences the formation of reproductive structures and may affect the development of neural circuits involved in the reproductive behavior. Activational effects. So now compare that with activational effects. These occur after the development and depend on the current hormone levels. Unlike organizational effects, they are generally temporary and reversible. So halimbawa, fluctuations in estrogen, progesterone, or testosterone may influence your mood, sexual motivation, aggression, and social behavior. So these effects vary over time because hormones levels naturally changes throughout life. Code number 2, which of these is an organizational effect? A prenatal hormone exposure shaping reproductive structures. B, mood changes associated with temporary hormonal fluctuations. Code number 2, letter A, letter B, which is the correct answer? All right, so if hormones influence development, do males and females actually differ psychologically? So this topic often generates lively discussion, but it also requires careful scientific thinking. When psychologists study sex differences, they examine average differences between males and females in behavior, cognition, or brain organization. So the key word here is average. So our module emphasizes that males and females are far more similar than different in most psychological characteristics. Although some average differences exist, there is a substantial overlap between the sexes. So think of two overlapping circles rather than two completely separate groups. So many individuals, males or females, share similar abilities, personalities, and behaviors. Cognitive differences. So research has identified some small average differences. Male often perform slightly better on certain spatial tasks. Females also demonstrate advantages in verbal fluency and some aspects of emotional recognition. However, these differences are generally small and are influenced by both biological and environmental factors. Brain organization. Neuroscientists have also explored structural and functional differences. So some studies have reported average differences in overall brain volume, connectivity pattern, and regional activation. So halimbawa, males tend to have a larger overall brain volumes, whereas females often exhibit proportionally greater connectivity between hemispheres. But, and this is crucial, brain size does not directly correspond to intelligence, and individual variation often exceeds average group differences. Brain plasticity, and one of the most encouraging concepts in neuroscience is brain plasticity. So their brain remains capable of adapting throughout the life. Your experiences, education, culture, and learning continue to shape neural development. So ibig sabihin, it provides a foundation, but experience also matters greatly. So nature versus nurture. Imagine two psychology students in your class. One enjoys statistics and research, and the other excels in counseling and communication. So, can we conclude that their strengths are determined solely by biological sex? Of course not. Their experiences, their interests, education, opportunities, and practice all contribute to their abilities. So this illustrates why psychologists avoid simplistic biological explanation. So whenever you encounter claims such as women are naturally better at this or men are naturally better at that, pause and ask, what does the scientific evidence actually say? Biological psychology encourages us to interpret findings carefully, recognizing that observed differences are typically average trends, not obsolete rules, and that the biologically interacts continuously with experience and the culture. Now that we've discussed how hormones influence development, so let's examine another fascinating question. Can hormones influence how people behave? So most people immediately answer yes, and this is correct. But here's the important question. How much? Some people think hormones completely control behavior. Others believe hormones do not matter at all. But as psychologists, we avoid both extremes. Instead, we ask, how do hormones interact with the brain, thoughts, emotions, experiences, and the environment to influence behavior? So that is exactly the perspective of biopsy. Today's module focuses on two examples, aggression and parental behavior. This behavior illustrates how hormones contribute to but do not solely determine human actions. So let's begin with the most misunderstood topics in psychology, hormones and aggression. Whenever people hear the word testosterone, they often think, kaya pala aggressive. So have you heard someone's statements like this? So may initin ng ulo kasi mataas ang testosterone. Lalaki kasi natural na aggressive. So these statements sound simple, but science tells us the story is much more complicated. Our module explains that aggression is a complex behavior influenced by biological, psychological, and social factors. So that means hormones matter, but they are only one piece of the puzzle. Can you think of someone who has a very calm personality despite being physically strong? So, if testosterone automatically caused aggression, every individual with high testosterone will always be aggressive. But that's not clearly what we observed. So, let's first understand that testosterone. According to the module, testosterone is produced primarily by the testes in males, and to a lesser extent by the ovaries and adrenal glands in females. So notice something important. Both males and females produce testosterone. The difference is generally in average levels, not in the presence or absence of the hormones. Research has found a correlation between testosterone and certain forms of competitiveness, dominance, status seeking, reward sensitivity. However, our module clearly states that high testosterone does not automatically cause depression, or rather aggression. So instead, testosterone appears to increase sensitivity to competition, social status, dominance, and reward-related cues. Whether someone behaves aggressively depends on many other influences, including environmental circumstances, social norms, learning experiences, and personality characteristics. So imagine two varsity basketball players from different universities. So both experience increased competitiveness during an intense championship game. So one player channels that every energy into disciplined performance, teamwork, and strategic play. Another player reacts impulsively, argues with the referee, or commits unnecessary fouls. Did the hormone alone determine the behavior? No. There are coaching, emotional regulation, previous experiences, team culture, and decision making all influence how they responded. This illustrates Mozu's key message: hormones interact with the environment rather than acting alone. So another interesting finding presented in our module is that hormones and social experiences influence each other. So for example, testosterone levels often increase during competitive situations and may decrease following defeat. So notice what this means. We often think hormones influence behavior, but behavior and life experiences can also influence hormone activity. So this is called reciprocal relationship. So think of it as a two-way street. Hormones affect experiences. Experiences also affect hormones. So can you think of a competition where you felt your heart racing before it even started? Yes, so nandyan ang board examination, basketball, debate competitions, thesis defense, and job interviews. So our body prepares us biologically for challenging situations. Another hormone involved in aggression is cortisol. Cortisol is released by the adrenal glands during stress. So some studies suggest that individuals who exhibit aggressive behavior may demonstrate distinctive patterns of cortisol activity. But once again, the relationship is not simple. Researchers are especially interested in how testosterone and cortisol interact. Certain combinations of hormonal levels may be associated with an increased likelihood of aggressive behavior. So the important word here is may. Yes. So science does not claim that hormones determines destiny. Instead, they influence probabilities within specific contexts. Hormones never work alone. They interact with brain structures. So our module identifies three important regions involved in aggression: the amygdala, hypothalamus, and the prefrontal cortex. So let's briefly understand each one. Amygdala. This helps process emotional responses and detect potential threats. So if you suddenly hear a loud explosion outside, your amygdala quickly responds. Hypothalamus. It helps coordinate physiological responses associated with emotion and survival. Prefrontal cortex. This supports decision-making, impulse control, planning, and emotional regulation. So think of it as the brain's executive manager. When functioning effectively, it helps us pause, evaluate a situation, and choose an appropriate response rather than acting impulsively. So aggression emerges from interaction among hormones, brain regions, cognition, personality, learning, and environmental experiences. So that is why aggression cannot be explained solely by hormones. And one of the best known hormones associated with parenting is the oxytocin. So it is often called the bonding hormone. Oxytocin plays important roles in childbirth, breastfeeding, attachment, and social bonding. During childbirth, oxytocin facilitates uterine contractions. So after birth, it contributes to emotional bonding between parents and infants. So notice that oxytocin supports both biological and social processes. It helps explain why close physical contact and nurturing interactions strengthen emotional attachment. So think about many Filipino families. You'll often see a mother gently singing a lullaby while holding her newborn. So that affectionate interaction is influenced not only by love and culture, but also by biological processes involving hormones such as the oxytocin, prolactin, and fatherhood. So here, another important hormone discussed in the module is the prolactin. So most people associate prolactin only with milk production. So that is true. But prolactin is also associated with caregiving and nurturing behaviors. An especially interesting findings is that hormonal changes that also occur in fathers. So the module explains that after the birth of a child, men often experience decreased testosterone, increased oxytocin, and increased prolactin. So these hormonal changes may promote caregiving behaviors and strengthening parent-child relationships. So this reminds us that parenting is not solely a maternal biological process. Both mothers and fathers undergo biological, psychological adaptation that can support caregiving. So before we conclude this session, so let's emphasize one final point. The module reminds us that parenting is influenced not only by hormones, but also by the family structure, culturally expectations, economic conditions, and personal experiences. So consider two families. Both parents may experience similar hormonal changes after the birth of a child. However, one family has a strong social support from grandparents and relatives, while the other faces financial stress and limited support. Would their parenting experiences necessarily be identical? Not at all. This example illustrates the biopsychosocial model. Hormones provide an important biological foundation, but psychological experiences and social environments also shape parenting. Now that we arrive in one of the most important topics in today's lesson, but before we continue, I'd like to ask everyone a simple question. Are the words sex and gender exactly the same? So many people use these words interchangeably in everyday conversation. However, biological psychology distinguishes them as different concepts. So as a future psychologist, using accurate terminology is important because precision helps us communicate scientifically and respectfully. So let's begin with the first term. What is sex? So according to the module, sex refers to the biological characteristics including chromosomes, reproductive anatomy, hormones levels, and physiological traits. So these biological characteristics are part of how individuals develop physically. Earlier in our discussion, we learned about chromosomes, the SRY gene, hormones such as testosterone, and sexual differentiation. So those topics relates to biological sex. So when scientists discuss biological sex, they are referring to biological characteristics rather than social rules or expectations. So now let's examine the second concept. What is gender? So the module defines gender differently. Gender refers to the socially and culturally constructed roles, identities, behaviors, and expectations associated with masculinity, femininity, or other gender identities. So notice the difference. Sex focuses primarily on biology. Gender includes social and cultural dimensions. So think about our own Philippine society. So different communities may have different expectations regarding clothing, occupations, family responsibilities, or emotional expressions. So these expectations are shaped largely by culture rather than the biology. As psychologists, it is important to recognize that cultural expectations can vary across societies and across historical periods. Can you think of an example where gender expectations differ between cultures? Yes, clothing styles, household responsibilities, occupations, and emotional expressions. So these examples show that gender involves social and cultural influences. So let's move to another important concept, gender identity. Gender identity as an individual's deeply held sense of being male, female, both neither or another gender. For many individuals, gender identity corresponds with the sex assigned at birth. However, the module also recognizes that some individuals experience gender identities that differ from the sex assigned at birth. Importantly, contemporary psychological science recognizes gender diversity as a normal aspect of human variation. As psychologists, our responsibility is to not judge or stereotype people. So instead, we seek to understand human experiences using scientific evidence, empathy, and professional ethics. Okay, but just as an important clarification here, the module further explains that researchers continue to investigate biological and environmental influences associated with gender identity. So evidence suggests possible contributions from genetic factors, hormonal influences, developmental processes, and neurological factors. However, no single biological factor fully explains gender identity. So that sentence is worth remembering. Human behavior and identity are complex. Now, let's discuss sexual orientation. So according to our module, sexual orientation refers to enduring patterns of emotional, romantic, and sexual attraction. So the module notes that individuals may identify with different social or rather sexual orientations. Research suggests that sexual orientation is influenced by multiple factors gaya ng genetics, prenatal hormone environments, neural development, and environmental influences. So again, notice the wording multiple factors. Not one hormones, not one gene, not one life experience. So instead, biological psychology views sexual orientation as emerging through complex interactions among biological and environmental influences. So this reflects one of the central themes of today's chapter. Human behavior cannot be explained by a single cause. Okay, question. Why do you think psychologists avoid oversimplifying complex human behaviors? So, ethical and social considerations. As psychologists, scientific knowledge must always be accompanied by ethical responsibility. So, the module reminds us that research involving sex, gender, and sexual orientation has sometimes been influenced by historical biases and stereotypes. Because of this history, contemporary researchers emphasize objectivity, inclusivity, respect for diversity, and scientific integrity. Objectivity means we allow evidence, not personal opinions, to guide our conclusions. Inclusivity, it means recognizing the diverse populations should be represented in research. Respect for diversity means avoiding assumptions that one sex, gender identity, or sexual orientation is inherently superior to another. So imagine, you now become a licensed psychologist working in a hospital, school, or counseling center. Your clients will come from diverse backgrounds, cultures, and life experiences. So professional ethics requires that every client be treated with dignity, fairness, and respect. So that professional attitude begins while you are still students learning biological psychology. So let's review the major ideas from today's discussion. First, hormones are chemical messengers released by the endocrine system that influence growth, reproduction, emotion, motivation, and behavior. Second, the endocrine system communicates more slowly than the nervous system, but hormonal effects often last much more longer. Third, sexual differentiation begins during prenatal development through interactions among chromosomes, hormones, and developmental processes. Fourth, organizational effects shape development during critical periods, while activational effects influence behavior later in life. Fifth, research suggests that males and females are generally more similar than different, with only small average differences in some areas of cognition and brain organization. Six, the hormones such as testosterone, cortisol, oxytocin, and prolactin contribute to behaviors related to aggression, competition, attachment, and parenting. But these behaviors also depend on environmental and social influences. And finally, sex, gender, and sexual orientation are distinct yet interconnected concepts that emerge through complex interactions among biological, psychological, developmental, and cultural factors. So before we end today's class, I'd like everyone to reflect on this question. How has today's discussion changed your understanding of the relationship between biology and behavior? What is it scientifically inaccurate to explain complex human behaviors using only one hormone or biological factor? As a future psychologist, how can you understand hormones, sex, gender, and diversity help you become more ethical and effective mental health professional? Okay. So today, we've explored one of the most fascinating chapters in biological psychology. So we've seen that hormones influence the body and the brain, but they do not act in isolation. Genes matter, hormones matter, the brain matters, but so do learning, family, culture, relationships, and life experiences. That is why biological psychology is not simply the study of biology. It is the study of how biological systems interact with psychological and environmental processes to shape human behavior. As a future psychologist, always remember this important principle. Biology provides the foundation, but human behavior emerges from the continuous interaction of biological, psychological, and environmental influences. So thank you everyone.